States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And now we're ready for our mission statement to be read.
Richmond Community Schools mission. We will graduate students who are literate, responsible, proficient in state and national standards, and college and career ready.
Thank you, Aaron. And now, Dixie, the vision, please.
By 2020, Richmond Community Schools will be the highest performing school system in East Central Indiana.
Thank you. And now we're ready for our first segment of public commentary. Anyone in our audience wishing to speak tonight? Seeing none, we will move right on to our snapshots of success.
And our snapshot of success tonight involves our annual United Way campaign. And I would like to highlight the efforts of one of our school employees. In fact, I'd like to ask her to come to the podium. Pam Carr. She wasn't prepared for this.
Your coat on. Yes.
Pam is one of our cheerleaders in this district, and she was the one who spearheaded our United Way campaign. And she did so on the very first day of this school year with all of the employees gathered together at Civic Hall. She orchestrated not only that presentation, but also the whole campaign as it progressed. And there aren't many in the district who can pull off something like this and have as much fun as she has had and we've had with it. So, Pam, did you bring anyone along with you tonight to help us with this presentation?
I did.
And who is that person?
He's actually the president of the United Way of Whitewater Valley, Mr. Scott Quintel.
Welcome, Mr. Quintel.
Thank you. And Dr. Borf, I'm glad you had her come up because I had been told that I was dead if I didn't. So, thank you. You're going to go sit down now, aren't you?
Yeah.
Not so sure you aren't.
The night is still young.
Well, before you have anything, before you have make your comments, could we present you with a check?
Sure.
I thought maybe we could. Sure. Linda, this is where you come in. Mrs. Morgeson is walking around and will hand you a check from all of our employees.
On behalf of the Richmond Community Schools employees, we have a check here for $14,792.40.
That's great. Thank you very much. I would also point out that this is almost 10% higher than what the employees gave last year, which I think in some of the times and challenges we face is very illustrative of the support that Richmond Community Schools gives the community, not only with the kids and how they serve in education, but also the other needs in the community. Just real briefly, if you'll permit me, I'd like to share four things with you. The first is a thank you to Pam and the coordinators in each of the buildings. This doesn't happen without their willingness and their involvement to put their time and effort in.
Kodak moment.
Anytime I can help, Misty, you just let me know. Secondly, I would share that this represents the contributions of approximately 200 employees here at Richmond Community Schools. It's a lot of folks that reach into their own pocket and make a personal contribution. So I really appreciate each of them and the personal decision they make to support the campaign. And then third and finally, I'd like to share with you some news that's hot off the press. The United Way Board met today and has voted in a couple of new board members that you all know. Bob Coddington, your business manager here at Richmond Community Schools, as of 4:25-ish this afternoon, is a member of the United Way Board of Directors, and also Ray Wolpe from the high school has come on to the board. Ray, as you know, has been very supportive and involved with the movement. And I would lastly share with you that movement that started in Richmond High School and is known now throughout Wayne County as More Than Words outside the school building has expanded. At first, it was the high school and 6 other locations. It's now 65 locations in Wayne County that are participating. So it's just a great example of how kids and their compassion. I mean, kids, they're high schoolers. They're not just kids anymore. But their compassion and their commitment to setting an example can lead the whole community. So for those great things and for this check, thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And congratulations, Mr. Coddington.
Thank you.
That's a great
Looking
board to be
forward
on.
to serving.
Now you've got something to do when you're
Yeah.
Camping.
Okay, we are now ready for reports, discussion topics.
And we turn to Mr. Coddington for the quarterly financial report.
This is student council's usual meeting.
Good evening. My, isn't it great to be working in Richmond, Indiana? You look before this august group, we could be working and living any place in the United States that we wanted, and we chose Richmond, Indiana for a reason. Quality of life and the goodness of people. Looking forward to serving. We give our third quarter update, and we're going to be, I've been asked to be brief, because my usual riveting presentation doing this. But the first thing I want to say, there are no surprises to our financial data from the year that we're said. So I'm going to be, because of year over year and month over month, doesn't really show the picture. What we want to see is where we're going to end the year. And the year is going to be interesting because we're going to end the year with $35,881 revenue. We see that right there and right there. And that's $1 million less than we got last year. Not a surprise. We've known that where we are, because last year we got $36,885,000. This year we're going to get $36,881,000. To bring the board up to speed, when we saw this, we did not make cuts in January. In November of last year, we said that we would make the prudent cuts as we move forward, and that we might have to go to a rainy day fund up to $400,000 to balance the budget. And I'm proud of the team that I work with, because this is a team of commitment. We have an HR department. We have an operations department. We have this. With safety first, education first, and we provide the best safety and education that our money can afford. And we're going to turn around this year, and we're going to end up, and we're going to take, does that say 36.3? We're taking $700,000 out of our expenses. We're going to end the year today, pre-settlement. If we ended the year today, we would end with $251,000, not taking any money out of the rainy day fund. That's a disciplined approach to operations. Any questions on where we're going to end the year or how we got there? If you want to look at the expense side, you can see salaries from 24.6 to 24.2. And right on down the line that we're disciplined in not just FTEs, but we're disciplined in our spending, in our utilities, and everything. Now, one of the reasons that we said that we could go up to $400,000 out of the rainy day fund is because we realized very early on with the legislative session that we were going to be $500,000 short year over year in all-day kindergarten. So what happens when you add that $500,000 in for 2014? And when you add that in, let's just not worry about this. You will go right down here and you see that we're at 251 this year, and at next year, all things being equal, we'll have a $726,000 cash balance next year. Now, that's have some assumptions that we'll have flatline revenue. Don't know that that's going to happen, but today we're going to have flatline revenue. I haven't put it up, I haven't taken it down. So I'm very pleased today to give our quarterly update that say we're on target, we're on track to meet the needs of our school corporation and the needs of our students. I'd be glad to entertain any questions one might have.
Questions, anyone? You were so thorough that no one has any questions.
Thank you.
But I have a
Thank you.
comment. I think we need to say thank you. I mean, that's amazing, and we need to at least acknowledge publicly that we support and appreciate all of the hard work and the discipline and the commitment.
Our next report is a report on Board Policy Section 4000. For the last few years, we've been working to update our board policy books. We are now at the point where we need to be spending some time revising and updating Section 4000, which has to do with our support staff. And what I've put at your places would be a hard copy. Online you can find a copy of this as well, but at your places we have a hard copy of the proposed policy revisions. And for every policy that is current, you'll find the school crest, corporation crest on each of those pages, and that denotes the current policy. So basically what our policy service does, Neola, it presents updates, it takes a look at current case law, current legislation, and suggests changes. Most of these are not new policies. However, there are a few new policies, and you'll find that in the book as well. I'm not proposing these for adoption tonight or even first reading. What I am doing is putting these before you for your review, and we may go for a first reading within the year, but I would like also to share these with the REA as we have done in the past. So this is just to orient you to what's coming. We also will be working on Section 6000. 6000s are in, and the 6000 has to do with finance. That follows right after we're finished with these.
So how should we go about, we should go about reading this and thinking if we have questions, we just
I would
All those
encourage
to you.
I would encourage the board to read these and to send questions our way. You may also want to have a separate committee, as we've had in the past, come together and simply review them and discuss any questions that might be there.
So Pat and Jeff, you didn't do these, or you did do these?
They did not
we
do
haven't looked
these.
at these.
No.
Okay.
Last year, we had a policy committee, and that committee includes a member of the REA, and so that's what we've done in the past.
So what is the desire of the board? How you want to handle this? Do you want to do it the same as we've done it before, or do we want to do something different? Thoughts? Personally, I like the committee format. I thought that was,
That keeps everyone from having, and then the committee points out the changes and so forth. So.
What is the timing? You want it done by?
It'd be nice to have this done by Christmas.
Okay, I can do that.
I'll do that.
so Kelly and Pat?
So be it. And we'll ask for a committee member from the staff, from the REA.
That's aggressive. 6,000 is going to be done by Christmas, too?
No, I won't introduce those by Christmas. Well, that depends on how fast this committee works. I guess it could be introduced before
Now,
Christmas.
we worked pretty fast before, Jeff, you know.
Fine, sure.
Because we have some 3,000 policies that need to parallel these, so.
That's right. That's right. A
I'll work
human
with you.
resources person would be
Okay.
very appropriate.
So in this packet that we have, one of these is the proposed and one of them is the way it is now, is the way it is currently, or?
The proposed is within the box.
Right.
The current would have the crest.
So
at
you've
the top.
already gone through these?
Yes.
Okay. That'll save a lot of time when we sit down as a committee.
And if they took anything out, they mark it out?
No, no. You have to put them side by side to see what the difference is, and we can help you with that.
Not as easy as you thought.
I
But
still
you've
think
already
it'll help.
volunteered.
It's
so-
not as long as the 8,000s.
Correct.
The 8,000s were long.
Okay, great.
The next report has to do with the technology vision statement, and this is a follow-up from our last board meeting. At the last board meeting, we had a work session involving different groups coming together, identifying concepts and themes for a vision statement. What you have in front of you is a first draft, no, it's actually the third draft, about the third draft of a vision statement with outcome statements and process belief statements. The reason this is so involved is that there were some really nice comments made, but they tended to be not vision statements as much as goal statements and just belief statements. It seemed that they were well positioned to support a vision statement. So the vision statement, which is at the top of the page, would drive some of our work as we're looking at digital conversion. But this is also in draft. We have presented this once to the REA for some input. We would like to go back and spend a little more time with them talking about their thoughts on this as it's evolved. These outcome statements are almost like goal statements, and that also has a place as we're moving forward in this idea of a digital conversion. The process belief statements are just that. If you notice, those have the shoulds in them. They're not outcome statements at all, but they could drive some or help direct efforts as we're moving forward, and we'll be talking about this technology vision statement for some time to come. It's going to be our guiding force. So I present that to you tonight just for further review.
Comments or questions? Pat?
I appreciate it because I sent a couple of comments, but I'm curious about the second one under process belief statements. The degree to which students have access to technology outside of school must be determined. You mean personal? I didn't know whether it was access. I mean, that just seems so absolutely impossible to determine, and whether you were talking about just personal devices or
I think
what?
if I reflect on some of the conversations that I heard, this talks about the fact that we have to have some conversation about how much responsibility the schools take in providing access outside of school, what we're going to require of students. We don't have any specific, I don't have a specific statement of expectations. That's one of the conversations that we felt we needed to talk about.
Like
And-
internet connectivity?
Right, right.
Well, and access to the wireless and I mean, that's what you mean by connectivity.
We felt that for equity, at least what I remember, was that all students should have access. All students should have the chance to participate in this technology environment. But one of the big conversations would be, outside of school, how realistic is it to assume that every student needs to be participating in that or be required to participate?
So did people talk about including places like Morrison Reeves and other entities in our conversation about access and equity?
Well, there was it went even beyond that, because there was one suggestion that we keep the buildings open at night, at least certain buildings and have the libraries, which could be media places, have those open for after-hour use for whole neighborhoods.
Yeah, yeah.
So I understand that you want to take this back to REA and for more discussion with
Yeah.
teachers.
They had some nice feedback for us just on first blush, but
Okay.
we've only had that one conversation with them, and I said that we would be coming back to them. In fact, this version 3, I think, was rearranged after having some conversation with them. They saw it very important to have as an outcome statement the very first one. The access to and use of technology is an integral part of education, shall be guaranteed to all students and teachers. They thought equity was essential as a statement.
Is there also discussion taking place at the building level pertaining to this document?
Well,
Is that another way for
yes,
input?
yes, we have asked for feedback from the principals and they need to talk about it with their staffs. The degree to which that's happened yet probably is minimal.
Okay, so I'm thinking of a timeline here. So is the first thing that needs to be done is for us to adopt this?
A vision statement needs to be adopted.
Okay. And so then, after that happens, then what's?
A whole series of items should be put in place. And Mr. Tidrow has prepared for you to look tonight at some of the activities that need to happen in this first phase, which is the planning phase. So I'd like for him to have the opportunity to talk to you about that.
All right, thank you, Dr. Borf. What we've done here is, at our last meeting, we looked at a Gantt chart that was made available through a organization called Project RED, and RED stands for Revolution in Education. It's just an acronym, but we're looking at a Gantt chart here that is over 1,500 lines, which is tasks that are ordered, and all this is a framework to help guide us during this process. And what it does is breaks it down into, we've broken it down into 5 phases, basically. I've got a research and planning phase, which is really where we're at right now. We have a design phase, implementation and a rollout phase, which is when we start maybe distributing devices to the students and to the partners. Then we have a kind of monitor the results, evaluate how things are going, and then improve on that process maybe. And then I put final phase in this document as a kind of year 2 and beyond. So really we just keep repeating it, whatever that year 2 means. But I thought I would show you a breakdown of one of the subtasks inside our first phase here. I'm going to draw your attention to the green highlighted one here. It's called Define Objectives in Support of Vision and Strategic Plan. And so you can probably guess that we're kind of at that stage right now where we're talking about how our vision of technology fits into our overall strategic plan for the organization. And as you can see, we've opened up additional tasks underneath there. And again, these are just what has to be done. And we can rename these, we can move them around, of course. It doesn't really tell you the strategies or the specific tools of what you need to do to accomplish these, but these are nice guidelines and tasks that we can monitor. Establish an evaluation criteria, for example. Detail a district's objectives. That's something you guys have done a lot with the strategic plan. Align these district objectives, which is the technology vision, into a strategic plan. And then there's another one here called change management activities, which you talk about maybe some of the inhibitors that we may need to change, or philosophies we may need to change, or things like, do we know that maybe 20% of our students don't have internet access, so that could be an inhibitor, you know. What we found was that we take a survey every year when we do our beginning of year what's it called?
Registration?
Registration, I'm sorry, yeah. When we do our registration, we ask them, do you have internet at home? And we see that over 80% do. The problem is, we didn't ask the right question. The right question is, do you have Wi-Fi at home?
Yeah.
So many times, they have internet,
Yeah.
but it's hard code, linked.
Dial-up.
So we want to know, do you have a Wi-Fi device? And that's what we find with a lot of school districts out there. So right here, that's one of the things that we need to do is think of those things that might inhibit the activities. So this is just an example of part of this plan, and it can be daunting if you look at, oh my goodness, 1,500 lines, but really that might be 3,000 or 5,000 when you start digging through there, and some of these lines are maybe 5-minute tasks, some could be 5-week tasks. So this is just a way to look at things and to help keep us on track, and also assign them to different departments or different people. So.
But you notice what's at top. Develop a shared vision, mission, strategic plan. We need to do that first. That happens, and then we can start working on some of the other pieces. Not all of this happens at one time. Some of it is sequential over time. Some of it does overlap. So,
Right. There's some dependencies. Something has to happen before
Right.
something else happens, or some things can be run in parallel, of course. So we can't get the computers or devices ready until we order them and have them in place. We can't do that until we have approval of the financial part. So we have some dependencies there, but you can be planning these things. You can be looking at them and developing the strategy to get there. So any other questions or? Yes, Aaron?
What is fit gap?
Fit gap, this is where you look at if there's any places in your plan that aren't meeting your needs. So you might need to change things when you get to that point. So
Oh, that's
it's either a fit or there's a gap.
there's a gap, yeah.
You thought it was an acronym for something, didn't you?
Well, Dr. Borf, I had, as I rereading my notes to myself, I wasn't at that other conversation, and what concerns me the most is as I listen to other school systems, they keep talking about one answer, one kind of technology to meet the needs. They're just going to roll out a one-on-one, and they're assuming everybody gets the same thing. And I want to make sure in our process belief statements as well as our outcome statements that we're looking for appropriate technology for appropriate student objectives, that there are some classes that need X technology and other classes that need other things.
That's correct.
And so I just want to make sure that that is clear. We're not looking at one size fits all. We're looking at the size that best fits the
This fits the
appropriate
student,
learning.
Right.
I don't think any place we've said, to take it from the opposite point of view, we
Right.
have not said that all technology needs to be uniform and consistent across all grade levels.
And-
We don't believe that either.
And the challenge to that is people out there who are just talking about technology assume one-to-one means everybody gets to take an iPad home or something like that. And I just want us to be clear that that's not what we're talking about.
No.
We have yet to define one-to-one.
Exactly.
Some scenarios are you might take it home. Some are you might get it as you come into the
Yeah.
building every morning, then you drop it off for charging
And a
overnight.
different thing for
and
a different
type of
class,
device.
yeah.
You're right. Mhm.
Well, and I think that in the statements that have been written, I feel like they are focused on curriculum and instruction.
Which they should be.
Instead of, and, we tend to fall back into talking about the devices and the technology rather than the curriculum and how we're going to make the technology fit with our curriculum, and that's going to be our guiding force. And I feel like our statements do that. We just have to make sure that we follow what
And that
those
we state
statements-
it publicly enough that people realize we're doing that.
If I could say something, one of the things, when we have our technology committee that we've had over the last year and a half or so, that comes back a lot of times. You have these devices, you have these tools, but it really, you have to start with that curriculum goal and see how it's going to meld into that and use it as a tool. So it is different now than it was, say, 10 years ago. So, Sorry,
Well,
Jeff.
one of the things, I think, for Pat is I think, didn't we decide to start, or we liked the phrase 1 to X versus 1 to 1?
Uh-huh, yeah.
So-
Yeah, Pat, we mentioned that last time, was that you see a term 1 to 1, now you're seeing a 1 to X. Most of us around this table have more than one device that we use during the course of a day. It's dependent on what we need, and that's, maybe we can't do 5 devices for a kid, but we can have that device that they need for that particular case. They don't need an iPad when they're taking AutoCAD, for example. They need a full-size machine, but maybe they need an iPad when they're mobile and out doing something else. So you're exactly right. That's a good point. Anything else? Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be bringing this back.
Okay, we're ready to go to our action items now.
And we turn to Mr. Coddington for our receipt of donations recommendation.
Thank you, Dr. Borf. Tonight, we ask the board to accept from Aaron's Inc. to the Hibbard Building for donation to be used for the life skills students, and from Claudia Ramey to the Community Partnership and Engagement Office in memory of Jane Austen for the mentoring programs. We ask the board to accept the very generous donation of $4,030.
Motion made by Aaron Stevens. Seconded by Jeff Slifer. Comments or questions? Aaron?
Certainly. Could you explain what the 4,000 for? I know that's for life skills. Was there anything in particular?
No. It was a non-restricted gift for life skills students that have many needs. Sometimes it's clothing, sometimes it's personal need items, field trips, very generous donation.
I wanted clarification on that for the public because, that wasn't purchasing one item, that they thought that's going to fit the needs, a continuous need of so many of those students on an ongoing basis that will cover. And that's magnificent. So.
It's a great help, and you say, boy, I just wish I had $100 to do this. Now they do.
Wow.
Thank you. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
Our second item under action will probably not result in action tonight. I don't know that I'm recommending a first reading. And the reason being that Mr. Millis and I would like to present this as not necessarily a policy, but more of administrative guidelines with a policy to follow. You'll see that at your places, we've given you a hard copy of a more succinct policy. It has the provisions that you have read about in the draft version that we've presented, but we believe that what the draft version that we've presented to you tonight, it would be more conducive to guidelines that would also fall within the Code of Student Conduct inclusion. So I'm not asking you to do a first reading. I'm presenting this in much the same way I did some of the other policy issues that we've talked about tonight. I'd like for you to look at this, and I will be bringing this back for a first reading. This is the Neola draft. It has all the provisions of recent legislative changes built within. If you were to look at that copy and then this draft of the anti-bullying student policies and guidelines that Mr. Millis has put together, you'll see if we did a crosswalk, you'll find all the provisions therein. But like I said, it's a more succinct version, more in keeping with your policy book. I'm not asking you to do that. I haven't even seen, Mr. Cross hasn't even seen this one. So we would want him to take a look at it before we would recommend it for first reading. However, because it's incumbent on us to address the anti-bullying legislation, I would like to show you some of what we're doing within the system right now to prepare for the anti-bullying policy and practices that we, by law, must put in place. By practice, we've had many of them. This is nothing new for us, but some of the provisions are, and the reporting form would be. Mr. Millis has authored much of what you see before you, and I will let him walk you through that if that's what you would like. He also might want to talk about the form which he has put together and the PowerPoint that we're using to train our staff.
Well, there's a lot here, and this is a result of obviously responding to the legislation. And we had 7 administrators and 1 behavior coach work on our addressing the items that were in the legislation. What we used was a template provided by the Safe Schools Academy, and then filled in as we felt our school corporation would respond to these items. The required items, we wanted to keep it on the shorter end, but it just seemed like required items moved us to have a more thorough language to that, such as what education programs we're currently using, which I would say that we've had those in place for several years with our steps to respect in grades 3 to 8 and second steps. 9 to 12, we are looking at some research base. We're trying to figure how we put that in, whether that's a homeroom application, but Mrs. Wolpe spoke to students and went over the legislation and talked about bullying in response to the October 15th deadline. And we currently believe we're doing some things in that area as it relates to maybe better than other secondary schools as it relates to Challenge Day and the movement and some other authentic things that are coming from students. Mm-hmm. So we feel that in comparison, we're probably ahead of a lot of corporations, but still work to do. It is a current buzzword in the social media. There's not a day that you don't pick up the newspaper or watch TV news, and there isn't an item that has bullying in it. So we realize it's an important topic, a sensitive topic, and we want to take that seriously. It's a work in progress. We will, once the board approves this as what we consider to be guidelines and a part of our student code of conduct, which we will put on the web. It's rather lengthy, probably to include with the student code of conduct. So we addressed that early in the year. If you remember, we put a notice in there that there would be student guidelines forthcoming. Just kind of hitting some of the major parts of this. The actual definition of bullying changed somewhat, and one key phrase that I think has made us all pay more attention is that it doesn't just stop on school grounds. It also may be addressed for activities with RCS students that occur outside of the school day. Most typically that occurs through social media, and we're finding more and more of that. So we've had some incidents and we've addressed them. I believe it really gives us a stronger position to address it. I think prior to that we were probably on some weak ground in terms of trying to address things like that. But it also puts a little more burden that we have to investigate and pay more attention to that. So we are trying to implement this prior to even approval. We've worked and talked to our staff, and I believe most of the schools have gone through the PowerPoint just explaining the law and outlining what we're doing about it. I think also the legislature wanted school corporations to spell out reporting requirements, and we did so. If an incident for a staff member that observes, we'll call harassment probably the first time, but bullying behavior, if student safety would be a concern, it needs to be reported immediately to a principal or principal designee, and then a written response to follow that. We had the reporting form, for the most part, is something we've been using. Mrs. Hilligoss had worked on that several years ago. We added several items that address the requirements in the law. You have to identify one of 4 different types of behavior. It also occurred when we were changing from over to PowerSchool and incident reporting. So Mrs. Carr assisted us with that. I think we're still adjusting to that, and some concern in the principal's office about getting that into the system and trying to be as accurate as we can. There's guidelines about reporting back to parents. I think that was a big piece of this legislation, and so we have outlined that parents would be informed, whether either or, if it's a student who has the bullying behaviors or a student who has the recipient of that, that the parents would receive that information. It outlines in number 8 the investigation timetable. Sometimes it takes longer than a day, but no more than 5 days in terms of report on an incident.
Questions now, or can we ask?
Well, I'll just about really highlighting what I want to, and then you can go ahead and ask questions. There are some, in the legislation, they wanted us to address staff members and the requirement that they recognize bullying behavior and report it. So we included information on that. I've included our education programs with students, and that each year we need to train our staff. I think that's kind of open-ended. This year we're focusing on just making them aware of the law, what we're currently doing, and in the future we'll keep adding pieces to that. So I'll let you ask questions now. I know there's a lot here to digest, a lot of policies that we're going over.
You might want to highlight the form. The public needs to know we do have a form.
The form is posted, and this is for staff members. Again, we've currently been using most of this. We've modified it to include level 1 is classroom, level 2, something that would reach definite parent contact, level 3, administrator intervention. At that point, there would be counseling that would go along with that, and then a disciplinary action or response by the principal. We keep a hardbound copy of each incident, and then it's entered into PowerSchool so that we can report that at the end of the year. I think there's more awareness to do this, and I think there's some concern is, do I report this, or is this just a fight? So we're still trying to ferret through some of that.
So this is written, obviously, this is policy. So how are you writing something that will go to parents so that, or do you just give them the entire policy? I mean, I think it's spelled out here, but it's a lot of reading.
Yeah.
And so I was just wondering how you notify parents of what this is all about in lay terms, I guess.
Well, our committee talked about that. I think initially we want to accomplish the task and have it available on the web so that if often in our business it doesn't become an issue until there is an issue, and then we can refer them to that. But I do think there's probably a little more proactive approach that we have talked about, and a more streamlined communication that probably would be warranted. But I can't say specifically what that might be. But
we haven't drafted
letters
a letter.
home or.
Okay. So you're using the form though now?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
We have used a form very similar to this, but I'll say there's just more heightened awareness of it with teachers and other staff members now.
Okay. Well, I was just thinking that it seemed as though that maybe it's pretty imperative that we notify the parents as to, you know, what this is all about.
Right.
So, Aaron?
Thank you. However, do have a question. Well, first of all, comment. Very interesting. While I'm watching the news this morning, ESPN to be exact, there is a parent suing a school corporation in Texas because their football team lost 91-0.
I saw that.
And they're suing the school corporation because they considered that a form of bullying. That's, you know, I'm thinking, really? Okay, that's taking it to an extent. Looking at the bullying policy of Neola and this draft, I think I was missing something. Maybe it wasn't spelled out in here. In here, it has specifics. Neola's version has very specific definition in regards to the locations of bullying, continuation of a day, to and from an event, a school event. I don't know if it was in there because 2 years ago, in one of our legislative sessions, delegates' legislative sessions, there was an issue that came up from a northern Indiana school in regards to students who were on their way to a basketball game, stopped off in another community at a restaurant. One group confronts the other group as an ongoing continuation of a problem that had been occurring. And it, you know, the board had not included that in their policy in regards to location. Did I miss something in here, Mr. Millis, in regards to location specific? I know that whether it be definition of a continuum.
Probably, not, I mean, it's, these, this is a number one under policy revisions, provisions. These discipline rules may apply regardless of the location in which the bullying occurred. The bullying and targeted student or students at a school within the school corporation.
Okay.
Scope is broad now.
Wasn't
It-
that in
Should we tighten that a little?
Well, that is almost taking it from the
the law? It's
legislation.
the law. It's
yeah.
law.
The legislation is that, which is why everyone's concerned, is
Yeah.
because it has broadened it, and we aren't really allowed to tighten it. Isn't that the issue?
Pat,
I have a couple of,
did you have anything else, Aaron?
I missed what he had
Okay,
said where.
Go right ahead.
In number one,
I see the state statute.
in compliance with the code, these discipline rules may apply regardless of the location in which the bullying occurred when the bully and targeted student are students at a school within a school corporation.
Okay. I guess
Now,
mine.
the Neola language, often what Neola does is they'll maintain elements from previous policies and then strike out or add and update. So I think that's what I see reflected in that Neola piece, but it does broaden it.
Well, if you have the IC code in there and if it's spelled out in the IC code, we're covered. So, and I'll just look that up. So.
Although,
Good.
since it is an important part of Neola's policy, I mean, since it is some, they do spell it out in Neola's that it says exactly when and where, and kind of like the way it's worded in the policy, just because it takes away any doubt of, well, you know, this was on the way home from a game, but we weren't in the school building.
And I guess that's the point that I was trying to make. It's, and this draft is fine, and if what Neola has in here is spelled out in Indiana Code 20-33, et cetera, that's fine. But they're more specific in regards to that, and you know, just to cover and protect ourselves, I want to, you know, not everybody will.
We'll examine their policy.
Dr.
That's a
Bork
draft.
and I just looked at this today.
Yeah.
And Ron has reviewed this, and, you know, maybe listening this evening in that particular section, we might make some revisions to that.
But we also want to make sure, this bullying policy from Neola is a draft also.
Right.
Yeah.
And we'll want to make sure that it complies thoroughly with recent legislation as well.
Okay, Pat.
What concerns me is the bigger picture question. I think one of the things we learned from Safe School, Healthy Students, from Challenge Day, from the movement, is bullying is a community-wide issue. And we have been legislated to take care of students or so on. But even listening to the news this week, where do we put bullying of our employees? I mean, I know the legislation did not, I mean, it was only student on student or adults on students, but there are challenges. I mean, I think we have a challenge. We want to make clear that we don't accept bullying from the student point of view to adults in our school system too. So this is following the letter of the law. Why shouldn't we be following the spirit of this law, which is to really get a handle on a community-wide issue, and namely bullying? So I don't want us really just to say, okay, we're going to send a letter and tell parents about this. We, in some ways, ought to take a community-wide stand against bullying, against this whole behavior. And one of the pieces of the policy that I think the public ought to know about is if you falsely accuse someone of doing it, you're as guilty as, I mean, we have, in this draft, it says, if somebody finds that you falsely accused somebody. So this isn't just I mean, somehow this feels so narrow to me, and I feel our responsibility is greater to help kids understand how they behave. And because we found there was a teacher found dead this morning somewhere in Massachusetts, and last week it was somewhere else. So do we dare broaden the policy to include students on adults?
Well, remember, we have other policies regarding student behavior.
I know, but is that...
Bullying is one piece. You also have respect for authority. You have intimidation. You have harassment. You have physical aggression. All of those are part of the bigger picture.
But when they're not listed in a piece that talks specifically about bullying, sometimes I think our student code is so siloed that here's one behavior, here's one behavior. How do we integrate our whole approach? It's just a question.
Civility.
Yeah.
The one word,
Yeah.
civility. However, the simpler you get, the more you have to suspect it.
Yeah, and you have to define.
That's right. And the respect for authority is probably at the basis of the way students interact with adults. And that's what we've seen in recent times in a number of places, including our schools.
Exactly.
And so we are integrating. Bullying is, if you recall, we didn't have a bullying policy before we brought it to you. But did we ignore bullying? No. We saw that as a form of misbehavior, and it was the General Assembly that asked us to compartmentalize that term and develop policy language around that. So I understand what you're saying, but I think in answer to that question, we need to pull up the variety and the array of policies we have dedicated to expectations of student behavior.
Maybe my point would be, if we do administrative guidelines, we put at top a couple of sentences that say exactly what you just say. We expect an environment of civility and respect for authority, and this is just one piece. Because sometimes I feel our patrons take out a piece and, that's the only thing they look at this particular time. How can we help them look at the entire picture?
If you look at our Code of Student Conduct, it begins with a letter from me. And in that letter, I talk about how everybody in a school setting has the right to be in a place where they are safe to express themselves and to learn. And that's probably the fundamental, that's the essence of what we do throughout that Code of Conduct, in which now we have a new section about bullying.
Right, that's a good point.
Dixie?
Well, I wanted to ask too, it was at an ISBA workshop, I think, in the spring, it was sometime. I remember going to it and listening. And they also talked about the chain of command for investigation, over summer vacations, Christmas vacations, spring vacations, when a lot of people would be gone. And there's a timeline, and I can't remember all the exact pieces, but there was a timeline for investigation and someone had to be in charge. So I didn't know if we were looking at how that would be set up as well.
We don't normally have student discipline investigations or issues going on through the summer, but we certainly have people who are here who are
They said you
authorized to
still
do
have
that.
to take care of that.
We do. And I mean, what I'm saying is it just normally doesn't arise, but if it does, we have the people here to do that.
You don't have to say who? I thought you did. I think I went to that same session. Don't we have to have on paper who? Is that what you're saying, Dixie?
I think I can't remember exactly, but I know they were, because they said it was like almost near impossible, but you had to do it because that was the law.
Well, we'll re-examine that, but I can tell you, we have people who are named for various functions. Maybe a bullying contact person is something that we need to do, but we do have due process people in place all the time.
Okay.
Suzanne?
You said the PowerPoint you're using to train staff, but right now what you're talking about is basically teaching staff and informing them of the policy is really what you're up to right now.
Yes.
Is that right?
The scope of the law, requirements for them, reviewing procedures, and then at some point, we'll be addressing other employees, and probably be a little different approach.
And then is there another phase of training? I mean, is there anything more that needs to be done regarding this?
I think it's ongoing.
Okay.
Now, you're probably not aware of these, and maybe at some point it might be helpful for you to hear some basic principles for steps of respect and
Strategies and such,
what
I
they're
guess, is
doing,
what
because
I was thinking of. Or
built
versus-
in that is basically a coaching piece for younger kids where initial harassment things that go on, teachers set aside time to coach students. And in more serious incidents, then it's done with a counselor.
Okay. Well, and also, I guess, some help with the definition of what is bullying, because
Yeah.
there's lots of things that kids do and say to each other that I would not consider bullying, just bad behavior. People treating each other badly. To me, isn't there a distinction where bullying is an ongoing harassment
It's a
kind
repeated
of thing? Okay.
behavior of harassment, and that's where, in terms of our reporting, that's how we do it. But
Okay.
that doesn't mean we aren't going to address harassment. It's just part of the behavior.
Understood. I guess I just want, bullying, as you said, sort of is a buzzword, and in no way do I intend to underplay that. I just want to make sure we understand that every time someone says something to you that isn't kind, that's not bullying. I think Ron's.
Well, and also I would say that, and we get phone calls sometimes when it reaches a certain point, and there's a certain responsibility that kids and parents are going to have to make school people aware.
That was my next
because
question.
it's always,
You have to
after the
inform
fact,
or we
they say,
can't do
well,
anything
they've
about
been
it.
bullied and that led to this, but, you have to help, let the system help.
Ron?
Yeah, a couple of points I wanted to follow up on. Pat's point, I think, is well taken, but let's make no mistake about it. The thrust of the legislation was directed towards student bullying. Pick up on what Suzanne said. We must acknowledge bullying itself is a conclusory term, and it's not going to be very effective for the investigator if teacher says Johnny bullied Susie or whatever. As Mr. Willis said, what we're looking at is bullying behavior. It's analogous to the whole analysis of sexual harassment. Don't tell me that John sexually harassed Mary. Tell me what John did to Mary. And that's the same thing we'll have to focus on. It's going to be an educational process, not just for the staff and the teachers, but for the parents.
Right.
Because you're quite correct. Not every impolite behavior constitutes bullying.
Right.
Like, by the same token, it almost sounds crazy, but not every fist fight between two people is bullying or is the result of bullying. Now, some are, some aren't.
Sometimes
So
it's just
it's
a-
going to be a work in progress and an educational progress for all of us, but it is something that, rightly or wrongly, the legislature perceived was a very, very serious issue, and we can
Well,
no
it is,
longer
I think it
be
is a
passive
serious
about it.
issue, yeah.
I think one of the conversations we hear often from parents, too, is that bullying's been going on forever and ever, and we lived through it, and it helped form us, it helped create character, and so on. But when many of us
One more question.
were growing up and suffering the bullying, we could go home and escape from it.
Yeah.
Today, kids are going home, and they're still suffering because now the bullying reaches right across the threshold of the home by virtue of the internet.
Okay, I
So
did
we
have
still
one more
have to deal with that, and we have to change our mindsets, too.
Aaron was first, Pat, and then
That's what.
Thank you. Question, it gets a little different. I'm trying to think, have I seen this before? We do have a policy on diversity. Do we have
A policy on diversity?
in regards to diversity? Maybe it's
Pam
just the
Litz,
training.
before she left, she did a search in all the policies that interrelate to bullying and anti-harassment, and this may not be conclusive to all of those, so there are a lot of interconnections, but 5517 anti-harassment, student code of conduct, 5602 includes some sections on bullying. So right now, we have a lot of cross-referencing. to
Where are
some
you
of
going
these
with your
issues.
question?
The reason I was asking that, because you mentioned the word civility, and we're talking about the colloquial expression of diversity, of bullying. However, in just training that I was in, again, annual training last week in regards to how diversity or lack of appreciation of diversity ties in to the issues of bullying, the number of the things, and I'm just wondering if down the line, if we should have a discussion on that, because,
Well, I don't know if diversity is but we use cultural competence,
okay.
Yeah.
and that's what the whole Challenge Day concept is built around, is cultural competence. So I'd say we do discuss it. I don't know that we have a policy driving us there, but that's not a bad idea to
Yeah.
look at.
All right.
Pat.
My question, I recalled, what about hazing? In teams and those kind of things. Is hazing defined in any of the? I couldn't find it in the policy. Is that defined as bullying?
It may be, but again, the legislation and even the piece before this emphasized repeated.
Right.
So I'm not sure hazing in and of itself is bullying, but certainly those are behaviors that fit
Right.
under intentional,
Right.
harmful.
It would certainly be harassment.
I would
It
say
certainly would be.
harassment,
Well,
yeah.
and sometimes it's just an informal tradition that folks do crazy things, and I hear parents say, well, that team hazed those, and I thought, I didn't know if that was part of this. It should be, in my mind, but I didn't know if that was
I would think
defined
so,
in that way.
although the language
Doesn't
in the
appear.
legislation doesn't appear.
Did you do a word search
No.
in our policies?
No.
That might be interesting to see if that comes up in any of our policies. I
I
haven't.
think there is a policy on that.
Seems like we had to do that a few years ago, but I could
Oh,
be
we could
wrong.
look it up under Indiana Criminal Code, Aaron says. Do you think we have a policy on hazing?
I think so.
One last thing.
Maybe guidelines.
Per Ron's comment about sort of going directly to calling it bullying, I was just curious about the form. Are you asking people to make a judgment about whether bullying has occurred already?
Bullying behavior, I guess,
Because it says bullied student name.
Well, and they have to
Bullying
identify the type
student
of,
name.
they have to identify.
yeah.
Yes, I just, to what based on what he said, it's like we're kind of already assuming that bullying has occurred versus bullying behavior, so.
We have a state report, too, that we have to put together.
Yeah.
So as we put it into the data system, we identify at that point. So, because at the end of the year, we'll have to upload a state report.
So they're actually asking you to make a call before
We
you've
are.
actually done an investigation?
Well, the investigation may reveal that it's not actually bullying.
I was just more looking at the terminology
it's
being
bullying
used. It already
behavior-
says it's bullying on this form, so.
If I can add to this too, the reason that form was in place is because with Safe Schools Healthy Students, we funded, we spread out as much as we could all over our entire district, second steps, curriculum, which violence prevention, and steps to respect, which was anti-bullying. This started 3-4 years ago, and that form is a part of that curriculum. So yes, it's already embedded in our system on how we approach these conversations currently. So that form's been in place, and we've been using it for at least 2 years now.
I
It's
get
just
it.
been
I just,
tweaked.
like I said, I was just
Yeah.
sort of, based on that conversation, it's kind of like we're already deciding that it's bullying.
Guilty
before. When the form's pulled out.
Because we needed to do forms and we needed to complete the conversation.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, Dixie?
Well, do we still do forms on harassment too? You used to have to bring the kids in and you had to fill out a form and all that. I don't know. How do you
I'm not sure.
determine all the differences between
Certainly, that would go
harassment
into the
and bullying?
reporting, incident reporting.
Yeah.
You know? It didn't need.
Very simply, if it's the same harassing behavior, if it's been repeated on the same student, by the same student, and it's the same, it would probably be viewed by the teacher then as time to get the bullying report out, as opposed to a harassment report.
I think maybe you're concerned with more reporting that may not be necessary if they're following this. I can inquire with the principal on that.
Well, I don't know if they still, but we used to have to do it. So,
This probably took the place of it, maybe.
Anything else? Okay, good conversation, so you'll be bringing it back for,
For a first reading the next time.
And I would like to have the guidelines and student policies so that we can add it to the student code of conduct.
Mhm.
at the same time.
Right, yeah.
okay, good. Okay, we're ready for our press conference. Anybody have anything that they want to clarify or ask? No? Okay, we'll move on then to consent items.
Our consent items tonight include the approval of the October 8th board minutes and executive session, recommendation, approval of the human resources and accounts payable, the Title II Part A grant approval, an approval of the STAM Coastline Family Foundation grant, and also an approval of an architect agreement having to do with our upcoming renovations in some of our elementary schools. Those items I would submit for approval tonight under consent.
Okay, do I have a motion? Motion made by Jeff Slifer, seconded by Kelly Baumgartner. Comments or questions? Jeff?
As I was going over the architectural agreement for, I noticed that the proposal was based on options, and you've listed multiple options, and there's a best option. Are those going to be defined later as they go through the analysis of which of the options we're choosing?
No, we're working on that now.
Okay, all right.
Okay?
So the fee doesn't change regardless of which way we go? Okay.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. And now we're ready for our second public commentary. Anyone wishing to speak from our public? Seeing none, we will go on to follow up old business.
I'm not bringing anything to the board tonight.
Okay, did you want to talk about our upcoming meeting?
Could do
with
that.
our legislators?
The date escapes me.
November 4th.
4th. Senator Paul and Representative Ham have both agreed to meet with the board to talk about the upcoming legislative session. While I would like to suggest to the public that this is open because it's a meeting by board members and it has to be advertised as such, it's not an opportunity for a broad discussion. We would like to limit this to educational issues. We would like to talk to them about our concerns in the upcoming session, as well as some of what they would like to be initiating as legislators in that upcoming session. And they'll be meeting with us here on that day.
I believe it's scheduled for 9 o'clock.
That's right.
Any comments or questions from board members about this?
On that or on something else?
Well,
Old
we'll
business.
do this, and then we'll move on to,
Are we going to have an agenda of
So I was just
questions
gonna
that
ask you.
we prepare rather than they
We
bring
could certainly
theirs?
do that.
That was our recommendation.
Absolutely. This is our conversation, not theirs.
I agree with that.
I want Rachel to get that.
so how do we want to go about making sure that we ask all the questions that we feel are urgent?
I don't know that we should ask very many questions.
I would agree.
Maybe, maybe two good ones, possibly a third. I wouldn't go very.
Like, how are they going to restore their support of public education? That would be a good one to start with.
So how should we,
Well, we can either have an open conversation on this tonight and arrive at a couple questions, or you could go ahead and submit questions, and Linda and I can work on that and communicate that
Either way
with the
is
two of
fine.
them.
I'll submit.
I
I
like
think
the
the
submit
latter is a good idea. Give us a chance to think about it, but
Okay.
I like that level of question.
okay.
I mean, I think that's the,
Because that's what started it, is that we feel like public education is just taking the hits, so.
I mean, I think that's the crux of the matter, and then a
Absolutely.
couple of more specific ones, and we're doing that.
So we have, what, that's a couple weeks away, is that what it is?
November 4th isn't too long.
Not too far.
They're only here on.
Yeah, it's a
So-
couple weeks away.
So happen to you by Sunday evening?
I'd say,
Actually, it's about a
By-
week, really.
I was going to say by next Monday or
Yeah,
Tuesday.
it's about
By,
We
you
should-
mean the
28 or
28th?
29, because
Because we'd like
From
to,
yesterday,
I-
right?
I understand you'd like to get these questions to them in advance. Is that right? And if so, we need to
I
get
think
that.
it'd probably be a good idea.
Maybe one question in advance. Maybe
Yeah,
some-
but not, but not,
I
but not
agree,
that one.
Jeff. I agree. May not want to come.
Sometimes the head cock has a kind of a good.
The other question is, how do they defend their voting record? I mean,
Okay, now we have our two questions.
That's the one we'll keep in our pocket. How about that?
I agree, Suzanne.
I got news for you, it's already out.
Yeah.
Oh, you're kidding.
Yeah.
Well, let's submit them
Yeah.
so what's your feeling on submitting them then to Mr. Paul and Mr. Ham? Do you,
The disadvantage to not sending them is that it doesn't give them the opportunity to have a substantial answer.
I would agree with that.
I think if you want a good conversation,
I think we have to.
we ought to help them prepare for it.
okay.
I don't want to blindside them, however, at the same
Exactly.
time, I want a very upfront answer in regards to the difficult, we've had two suggestive questions right now, and I'm sorry, I don't want anything rehearsed.
Well, but the voting record speaks for itself. They shouldn't be
Absolutely.
blindsided by us asking a question and then asking for them to define their position. They've already stated their position. That's not a blindside.
No.
Well, well, on some, maybe, that depends on your question. But my understanding is that there are some legislators considering elections of boards by partisan partisan
And that's
theme.
huge.
That really changes the essence of board dynamics.
School board dynamics, yeah, partisan, you're right. That would
So
be-
I would like to think that maybe they would have some positions on that. I don't know that will come as a bill, but we've been told that that's
Yeah.
what some
Well,
groups
and
are
if we're
working
going to
on.
be proactive,
Right.
we need to,
Yes.
Well, and part of this is for them to hear what we say, too. It's not just, what are you thinking, dear sirs, but here's what we want you to think.
Here's how to represent.
About.
Aaron.
If we're meeting at 9 that morning, how long will it last? Pat and I are going to be meeting with the Register that morning.
I would be surprised if it lasted more than an hour.
Okay.
They're
All right.
they're on the circuit at that point.
All right.
Okay, so get your questions in. If you just send, when you do your question, just send them to both Dr. Borf and to me, and then
I'm a little cynical.
we'll go from there and do it ASAP. All right, good. Also, well, Pat, you had something that you wanted to.
Two things. Erin and I agreed to meet with students at the high school to ascertain their ideas for a systematic way of getting information from students. So on November 4th, they had to wait till the trimester was over, and they had to wait for a registered deadline to make sure the articles were in. So on the 4th, we will meet with the Register during their regular time, and on the 6th, we will meet with the Student Council at their regular time, which is a Wednesday afternoon. And the two questions we've prepared them are, what's on your mind now that you would like the board to know? And the second question is, help us devise a systematic way to hear from students about things that are important to students and about things that the board is considering. So they have those two questions ahead of time, and so we will, Mr. Gabbard and both Mr. Irwin and Ms. Lepresti have at least primed them. Now, whether they'll come prepared, but we should have good conversation with both of those groups. And the movement is willing to have that as well. They have not had as many movement meetings because of homeroom and KOM and homecoming and whatever. So that will be within the next week.
Great, thank you. Did you have something else?
I do have something else.
Okay.
I'm curious, as a board, how we're going to utilize the information that we have been receiving from the pathway conversations. Remember, that started because parents wanted to see the pathways as a graphic or some way so they know what's supposed to happen in each of those periods of time. And we had words that were going to describe each of those big chunks. And we've been having pathway conversations, and I'm just curious as to where we're going to go with that and how we're going to illustrate.
The reason we were having the conversations with the students was so that we could develop that strategic plan to carry out your goal to define those pathways. And so that's what we're working on.
Good.
Now, we're still waiting for the first, we have some Ivy Tech personnel pulling in some students at that level, and we already have contacted Excel. They'll be helping us. Linda and I had a conversation with some ninth graders, but we would like to meet with another group of ninth graders. And Ray Wolpe is helping us with that. So we're still doing some data gathering, but what we're doing then will be revealed in the strategic plan for that particular goal.
Good.
And you'll have an opportunity for your input on that.
And then I think the board, conversations we had about Pathway was to try to find some way to share that with the public, and especially with parents. And so I just didn't know where the process stood.
It's pretty obvious. As you talk to the students, there are some pretty obvious things that need to happen at the different levels.
We discovered that, didn't we, Jeff?
Yeah, and you know what's interesting is that there's one common theme from group to group so far, and that is they're almost threatened.
The fear.
The next step is really something, so you're going to have to brace yourselves for that. You're going to have to mind your P's and Q's because that's not going to be tolerated. And it's something like just wait till your dad comes home.
Yeah.
You know, it's that kind of theme. So we don't want them to operate like that in their transitions, but
But the nice thing is they've all been pleasantly surprised that it
Yeah.
didn't happen the way that
That's
they
right.
really anticipated
Yeah.
or had been, it had been suggested that it was going to happen. So,
Well, and I think part of the way to use this pathway conversation is to help kids with the transitions that are not fear-filled.
well, another thing that I have learned in the 2 conversations that I participated in, that we really do need to be talking to our students more because they have the insight and
They know.
they're very perceptive and they tell you.
they're articulate.
They are very articulate and
They have
So-
creative solutions to some of the questions we ask.
they really do. They really do. So,
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. They've given some excellent ideas for better transitions. So,
I think it just verifies the work that you and Aaron are going to be doing,
Even at the high school generally.
and then for us to determine how we're going to ensure that we are talking to our students on a regular basis.
And they want tougher curriculum and harder rules.
They really
Yeah.
do.
Serious, that, they do.
Uh-huh. That's a common theme.
They like structure, yeah.
So, one of the things that I wanted to, well, I guess that's kind of new business. In old business, I do want to bring up the board handbook that we are nearing completion. And I think, did everybody, Suzanne, did you get a copy?
I'm online. Is there?
Well, here's a hard
Oh,
copy.
okay.
And anyway, we are also going to be distributing flash drives that have a lot of the documents that are very useful to us. And it includes both Richmond Community Schools documents and also ISBA documents that help to lead us and guide us as a board. So that will be forthcoming. And we are going to be utilizing this information at our next board meeting during our executive session. Is that correct? With Susie Hively, our newest soon-to-be board member. And so we will be working together to give her a lot of information about how the board operates, and Dr. Borf will also be giving information about how the administration operates and how we work together. And we will be utilizing that flash drive during that time also. So that meeting is going to start at 4:30. So please note that, and a little earlier than usual. So anyway, I'm sure that this document, this handbook, is certainly a work in progress, but at least we do have a beginning. And we can certainly tweak it, change it, add to, take away, whatever we feel would be best as we have other board members that join the board. So, anybody have any comments or questions about that document? Jeff?
I appreciate you spearheading this project.
Thank you.
I think it's a lot of work, and I think I said the last time, the document that you turned out for the initial draft just was far beyond what I thought we were going to do. So I was really impressed.
Well, thank you. I think that everybody helped and gave input, and so that hopefully helped to make it a worthwhile document as we move forward. So, we are ready for superintendent and board reports, reflections, celebrations.
I have
Dixie.
another question
Okay,
before that.
yeah, okay.
Are we going to get another update on enrollment and also
Yes.
where our kids have gone?
What we're,
Have it.
you have it with you? You're going to get it tonight?
Oh,
At least half of it. At least half of it, right. You're going to get the report that shows where they've come from. No, where they've gone.
What they're getting is where they went, and soon we'll have where they came in from. But what you'll get where they went tonight.
Tonight by email?
Thank you. Okay, one of the things that I wanted to bring up is it seems as though there's some consternation at the state level with our state board and our state school superintendent. And I just feel like that for the benefit of our students, our schools, our employees, that somehow we need to do something to
You could pick it.
to support and to let them know that we're here and that we know what's going on. And so I just wanted to have a discussion amongst us to think about what we might do. And if we could get our voice to be heard.
On behalf of supporting Dr. Ritz, is it Dr. Ritz?
Glenda Ritz.
So,
See, I don't know, though, is that really what we're saying? Because we have also thrown out on the table supporting, or the possibility of supporting the idea that the board should be elected and the superintendent should be appointed as it is at the local level. So that seems to be two different conversations.
I think we're asking the board to model the way of good governance of public education in the state of Indiana. And
Given the current structure as it is now.
yeah.
I don't disagree with that.
And part of what we're asking is, I mean, at the local level, we are expected to work hand in hand with the superintendent for the good of public education. I mean, they are, aren't they, representing public education? I mean, that's their charge. And so, I mean, I think at the root, the problem we're trying to solve is to support and make sure people understand public education is important and you can't dismantle it. And some of their behavior is dismantling public education.
It's not about who's right and who's wrong.
Exactly.
That's not what we're.
Exactly.
right, so how do you do that? We're concerned with the distractions that are taking place.
And we ask that they
They're
model
turning it in-
good governance.
They're turning it into a political battle
Yeah.
instead of a what's good
Absolutely.
for education. I mean, by the governor electing or appointing almost to a degree.
A second superintendent.
Yeah, really, and then several of the members are being appointed by the governor, so if the governor and the elected superintendent don't see eye to eye, then it becomes political.
And it's really undermining the electorate of the state of Indiana that voted Superintendent Ritz into office, yet, from the distractions that have been occurring over the last number of months, it seems like there is, that position in itself has less authority than what it has previously had, and as expected by, the citizens of the state of Indiana, especially those who support public education. And there lies my concern.
Yeah, it's like, where's our democracy? I mean, some people obviously didn't like how the election turned out, so let's just make it real rough.
But the point that I heard at our regional meeting was that the distraction is keeping the Department of Education from supporting our schools with the information they need, with the documentation that they need, with all of those things. So the shenanigans going on at the state board level are impacting local schools through basically they have ruined the efficacy of the Department of Education. And maybe maybe what we're calling for is for them to put those behaviors aside so that the Department of Education can support local education. Maybe that's what we're asking.
Well, then should the letter go to Pence and not the state board?
All of the above.
I would say.
Maybe all of the above.
You have sent letters in the past to all of the above.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
Including Glenda Ritz. I think she needs to know that whatever part she might have in that distraction.
Well, and I think too, tonight we talked about our kids and we talked about the word civility, and oftentimes we've talked about the word educational professionalism. And I think we need to really talk about adults modeling what we want our kids to learn from us. So.
So we nominate Dixie and Aaron to write our letter for us and let us.
I'm going to be gone.
Oh. You could get the draft.
Ma'am or sir.
Stop it.
Well, and they're not support, there's things we rely on that department
Yeah.
for, and we are not being served. That's a big piece of it too, so
Yeah.
it's
Well,
unacceptable.
Pat, you were involved in the great letter writing effort.
Okay, Pat.
I'm old.
I can help Pat if you like.
Okay, Suzanne and I will do this.
Suzanne, Aaron, and Pat, is that our
I'll help.
letter writing team?
I hope, Suzanne, you will have to go back and watch this, because some
was
of what
taking
we've said, the bullet points, I don't think we need as much a narrative as, here are our concerns.
I've taken some notes.
Right, succinct and so that they will get the
Concise,
point
yeah.
in as few words as possible, I guess.
They won't have
So.
to have their people read it for them, they can read it themselves.
So the action that I'm hearing is that you are
Drafting a letter.
drafting a letter. Is that in the form of a motion? Somebody's recommending that a letter be drafted?
I would be
to,
glad to move that there was a recommendation that we draft a letter to address to the state school board, state superintendent, and the governor. Anyone else?
Maybe to the chairs of both chambers.
I think that would be great.
Mhm.
That is my motion.
Okay, we have a motion.
And the Education Committee.
Seconded by Aaron Stevens. Comments or questions? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Okay, anything else for the good of the cause?
I would like to commend the Keystone students for the days of service that they had throughout the community. It was remarkable, noteworthy. You can see evidence of their good work if you travel down Sim Hodgins Parkway.
Absolutely.
Under the Richmond Avenue Bridge, those pillars have been painted by the Ninth Grade Service Academy, and I want to congratulate Lily Vincent painted the bell tower. So make sure you slow down enough so you
Really?
could see the bell tower from the high school on one of the pillars. Yeah.
They were Habitat, Cope,
They were in a number
Parks,
of
Abilities?
Abilities, Greenway. They were everywhere.
Yeah, it was
They spray painted drains,
nice.
It
street
was-
drains.
They,
Didn't
well,
even know
and
that.
commend those teachers and the volunteers, because the logistics that had to go into
Absolutely.
hundreds of kids going out was huge. So, and that it would be very easy to not do that because it's just too hard. So I appreciate that.
I wanted to give kudos to Bridget Hazelbaker. I look forward every week to seeing the new pictures on the website. We talk about joy of learning, and those pictures show
Demonstrate for sure.
joy of learning. They were just precious this week. I loved them.
Speaking of Bridget and pictures, I encourage you, as you're walking through back here, you see the mentors' pictures. what you're looking at now, they have taken pictures from past years of the same mentors and their students where they can, and you have several
by
years
side.
of progression.
Cool.
And just take a glance at those if you would. I thought that was an interesting display of photos.
Well, and our teachers just finished parent-teacher conferences, and I think they had a little less time this year to get those in, but from what I'm hearing, they worked hard and got a lot of parents to come in and had conversations, and now everybody's on a much-deserved fall break.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope that everyone gets some rest and enjoys the beautiful fall weather and the pretty trees
In the snow, wouldn't it?
and the snow.
Slash winter.
Which I don't want to see anymore until December the 24th.
Mr. Mays was telling me that he has a student from China and that she was so hoping this morning to find
There was a little.
there was some flecks. He
Slush.
said they got to see some
Didn't
flecks,
stick.
but she wanted to see a lot more than just flecks. So. Okay, anything else?
Well, you know what, I should say, we're happy to have Mr. Millis
I was
back.
going to ask about that trip.
Anything,
How did that
Mr.
go?
Millis,
Well-
that you want to share with us?
First of all, thank the board for allowing me to go, because it was a trip of a lifetime, and I've had two places I wanted to visit. One's China, one's Egypt. So I've done one of those. Hopefully in the future I can see Egypt. But really it just, I think, further cemented our global commitment, gave me insights as Dr. Borf and many of our teachers and other personnel had the opportunity to be there. And I was among superintendents with Superintendent Ritz, and we presented at a big conference. My topic was the role of the secondary principal in American schools, and just a great response, a lot of questions. I presented with another superintendent from Decatur County, and then we had an opportunity to visit schools, and those were the biggest takeaways. And also we continued our conversation with School 14 in Hangzhou. So we'll be meeting again here in November. So.
Great. Well, we're glad that you went, and we're glad that you're back home with us, safe and sound.
I'll add that as we got to the airport in Chicago, we ran to McDonald's just
I've been there, done that, yeah.
No, I was just going to add that we knew when Mr. Millis was at Hangzhou number 14 because the students that were here had posted on Facebook that he was there and how excited they were to see him. So that was really fun to
how
wake
fun.
up to and see that on their Facebook pages, that they got to see Mr. Millis.
How cool.
They really enjoyed the experience at Richmond High School and talked about teachers and other things.
And don't forget to do your voting on for our Christmas card competition. Many wonderful samples that students have done that somebody will be the recipient of the award for our Christmas card this year. So, board members, don't forget to do your voting before you leave. So, we are adjourned.